Good morning, students. So today we are going to start the revision of the Flamingo chapters. So first we'll pick up the poetry My Mother at 66, written by Brothers.
So My Mother at 66, this poem is autobiographical in nature. Why autobiographical? Because it's from the poet's own life. It's one of her own experiences. So though this poem is autobiographical, the poet is talking about her own experience. But the way she has written it, in the end, the poem attains universal appeal. Okay. The poem contains poet's own experience, the experience when she was separating from her own mother. Okay, she had come to her mother's house for vacation, and at the end of the vacation, she is leaving her mother's house and is going back to her in-laws. And this is the time when she is leaving her mother, and at this time of separation from mother, she becomes emotional. And at this time, when she looks at her mother, she finds that her mother had become very old, and one never tells what would happen to these old people. Though life is unpredictable, you can never predict what would happen tomorrow, but especially when the parents are very old. At the time when one is leaving one's parents for a little bit longer time, then one becomes emotional. That is but natural. So this poem attains universal appeal because what the poet feels, that is true with everybody. Everybody becomes emotional. Everybody has these kinds of, fears or, emotions at the time of separation. So here the word 66, this is also very important. When mother is 66, when she is no longer younger, when she had got her face wrinkled, pale face, when she is not that beautiful, when she is not that charming the way she was earlier. So at that time, how she looks like. So in this poem, the poet is starting like at that time the poet was leaving her mother's place and was driving to Cochin airport. So this is very important. Like she was going to the Cochin airport. She was leaving her mother's home and was going to Cochin airport to take a flight to her own in-laws. But on the way from home to airport, so home to airport, this is time. At this time when she's leaving home to reach airport by car, at this time whatever is written in the poem, that is being texted. So when she was leaving home, when she was driving the car and her mother was sitting beside her. At that time on the way, the poetess, she happens to look at her mother. At that time her mother was dozing off. So her mother was dozing off with her mouth wide open. So she was dozing off with her mouth wide open, and it shows the awkwardness with which the mother was sleeping. At the time, she also observes that her mother had got a pale face, which was ashen like that. Ashen like pale face. So when she was going from home to airport, she was driving the car. Mother was sitting beside her. Then the poet looks at her mother and finds her dozing off with her mouth wide open. So of course, one doesn't look nice when one is sleeping like this. And one more thing she observed, that her mother had got a pale face, which was like an ash. Her mother's ashen like pale face. Right? So the pale face, dozing off with mouth wide open, that makes the poetess feel as if her mother had become very old and she might die very soon. Right? She even compares the face of the mother at the time with the face of a dead body, the corpse like that. So she uses the word corpse in relation to the mother's face, that her mother's face looked like the dead body because its face was pale. So because of the pale face, mother looked like a dead body, and moreover she was dozing off. Anyways, these thoughts, when she had these kinds of feelings that her mother was dying, was about to die very soon, that very minute she wanted to dispel her thoughts. She did not want to think about these kinds of things, and she wanted to change her mind. So she put her thoughts away. That is very important in the line. So then she put her thoughts away. So what do you mean by put her thoughts away? She wanted to dissipate her thoughts. She started thinking about something else. Why did she put her thoughts away? Because it's a human nature that one doesn't want to think about negativity for a long time. Especially one doesn't want to think about the death of one's near and dear one. Okay, even one doesn't imagine one's near and one's death. So she wanted to change her mind. She wanted to change her thoughts. So she looked out of the window. What did she do to do this? She looked out of the window. Which window? Window of the car. So because she wanted to think about something else, she did not want to think about her mother's death. She looked out of the window, and what did she see when she looked out of the window? She saw two things. Number one, she saw merry children spilling out of their homes. So one, she saw, when she looked out of the window, what did she see? Number one, she saw merry children spilling out of their homes. So merry children. Number one, she saw happy children. Okay. And then those children were spilling out. Spilling is, what spilling? Like when there is movement, flow is there. Okay. In the car, what she was looking at, in the car, what she had already seen, her old pale-faced mother with mouth wide open, dozing off. Number one, see the pale face. Then you see sleeping with mouth wide open, awkwardness, sadness, old age. But outside the car, she saw youth, young children. They also happy faces, bubbling with joy. And they were like flowing, running, spilling out of their homes. See the energy, see the youth, see the vigor, see the happiness in contrast to what she had seen inside. Okay. So what was inside the car and what she saw outside the car, that they are total contrast. It's, way of life. The things don't remain as it is. Once upon a time, mother might also have been young, beautiful, energetic, but today see what she has become. But this is the circle of life. If somebody has become old, then the youth is still there. So she saw the merry children spilling out of their homes. And second thing she saw outside were trees sprinting past. Young trees sprinting past. Then outside, she also saw the trees which seemed to be running past. Her car was moving ahead, but the trees which were outside, they seemed to be running past. So another image, which is trees are green, okay, beautiful, and sprinting, again movement. So children were spilling, there was movement, and children were sprinting past, there is a movement. And trees are also symbolic of greenery or life or vigor, right? And children are themselves symbolic of, they symbolize youth, energy, and vigor. So what our inside was, that was in total contrast to what she found outside. And moreover, there, of course, the poet is presenting a contrast. The poet is presenting contrasting images. What are images? The image here, what kind of imagery we have got? We have got a visual imagery. What kind of visual imagery? What is visual imagery? Which we can see through our eyes. We can imagine with our eyes. Okay? When we read the line like the trees sprinting past or merry children spilling out of their homes, I guess by default we get the image of the children coming out of their homes. Or we imagine the trees sprinting past in our eyes. So these lines make the readers have a visual imagery. Okay? So the visual imagery in these two lines, and these two imageries are there in total contrast to what the poet had seen inside the car, right? So what was basically what is going on? Basically, the poet is going to the Cochin airport to catch to take flight. But on the way, when she was driving, she saw her mother having become very old, and she could not tolerate her. She could not like bear the feeling, you can say very idea that her mother might one day die. And in order to dispel her sad thoughts, she looked out of the window and saw these good things, positive things. Okay, what were those positive things? Number one was about the merry children, happy children, and they were spilling out of their homes. And the others were trees which were sprinting past. Okay, so she reached the airport. At the airport, what happened? There was a security check and all. So the point is like the wave went off. They reached the airport. In the car, the poet did not look at her mother again. They reached the airport, and after security check, so what happened? First, when she looked at her mother, she was quite disappointed that her mother had become old and will die. In order to dissipate her feelings, she looked outside and found children and trees. And this way the time passed. And finally, when they reached the airport, the poet, the daughter, did not look at her mother again. And there they went in for the security check or formalities, whatever one has to undergo at the airport. And after all the formalities, when the poetess was to leave her mother, then finally the daughter, or you can say poetess, looked at her mother again. She looked at her again. Looked at mother again. So this again is very important. Why again very important? Because what happens, the people whom we love, we always look at them and keep on talking to them, especially when we are leaving somebody, when we are going somewhere, then we look at our near and dear ones and we keep on talking to them. But here the daughter, the poetess, was making an effort not to look at her mother, because if she would look at her mother, she would be reminded of her mother's old age, and old age is symbolic of death. Old age means that one is nearing death, and that she did not want to even imagine. But when she was about to leave her mother, because she had to finally take the flight, then finally, because she had to look at her mother, she looked at her again. So again is symbolic of, again signifies that she was making an effort to look at her mother. So when she looked at her mother again, Then what did she see? She saw that her mother had become. So earlier her mother was like this, and now when she looked at her mother again, she found her mother having become wan, pale, like late winter's moon. So finally, when the poetess looked at her mother again before leaving her, she found that her face had become wan, pale, like late winter's moon. So what is like late winter's moon? Of course, it is a simile. Earlier also simile was when the poetess was saying ashen like that, ashen like that was also simile. Here now she says like late winter's moon. So what is winter's moon? Let us first understand it. Moon is basically symbolic of beauty and brightness, beauty, brightness, gleam, right? But in the winter, what happens to the moon? In the winters, the moon becomes weak, or you can say hazy, because it gets hidden behind the fog. Because of the fog, the moon in the winter becomes a little hazy and bleak. It doesn't shine that brightly the way it shines in spring season. And moreover, in late winter. So in the late winter with the fog, the moon becomes all the more dim. So now the mother has become like late winter's moon. Why? Because now she has become old. She has lost all her beauty, her charm, and her sheen. So in her youth, she might have been very beautiful. She might have been very energetic. She might have been very, glossy, shiny. But now she has become like a late winter's moon, which has become weak because of the fog around it. Okay, so she finds her mother having become old again, and that makes her remember very important point again. So when she finds her mother having become very old and weak, like late winter's moon, she says that she feels that she remembers her. That reminds her of her old childhood fear. So now when she finds her mother having become old, she is reminded of her old childhood fear. Now the point is like, what is childhood fear which she is reminded of again? The childhood fear was that in her childhood, the poet always used to feel that her mother would die one day. Children, it is a universal fact, like all children, when children are very possessive of their parents because they don't want to lose them. They always have a lurking fear in their mind, like maybe their parents would leave them. So that childhood fear had today resurfaced. So today this fear, this childhood fear, what kind of fear? Fear of losing mother. The fear of losing mother has resurfaced. Got it? So the fear that her mother might leave her, the fear which she used to have in her childhood, that fear has today come back again. And this fear is not making her look at her mother comfortably. That fear has overtaken her, right? But what happens? The daughter, the poet, is very much afraid that maybe she would never be able to see her mother again. She is very much emotionally disturbed. But this emotional trauma doesn't make the poet become weak, because she knows that she has to leave her mother, and she would leave her mother with a smiling face. This she knows, because the wives which you leave behind, they matter a lot. So she wants to leave her mother with a smiling face. So what she did, so before leaving her mother, what she did the only thing she did before leaving her mother was smile and smile and smile. So poet, she was emotionally disturbed. She was afraid that maybe she would not be able to see her mother back again. Despite her this kind of emotional state, she did not become weak in front of her mother and bade her farewell, bade her goodbye with a big and broad smile on her face, and just said one thing. And only she said, and what she only said was, "See you soon, Amma." So these were the parting words which the poet said to her mother. She said, so finally, before leaving her mother, she only smiled and smiled and smiled. So smiled and smiled and smiled. The purpose was she was hiding her pain behind her smile. Okay, when you smile a lot, when you try to hide your pain, then you have to smile more than ever. Okay, so she smiled a lot so that her mother was not able to see the pain which she had within her. And she only said one thing, okay, see you soon, Amma, see you again. So with this positive note, she left her mother for her next journey. Okay, so the poem is about like how we feel when we leave our near and dear ones, especially the parents who have become old, and while leaving them, we become very disturbed emotionally. But the fact is that life is the another name of life is about moving ahead. We cannot stop whatever may come. So life is all about moving ahead. So the poet also could not stop and being with mother forever. She had to leave her, but what she did, she put up a brave front and left her mother with a smiling and positive words, smiling face and positive words, like see you soon, Amma. Right? So this is what the lesson of life is. Like life is all about moving ahead. In between, and the circle of life will go on like this. One may come or one may go. Okay, the people we come across in our life, they may come or they may go. But yes, it is very important, like we don't stop playing our parts, playing our roles that efficiently, which we should, right? So with this, the poem has come to an end, children. Today, you people can revise this poem. Your first test of revision, first test will be next Tuesday. And it will be of 20 to 25 marks. It will be all MCQ based. And the first revision test will be of complete flamingo. Okay, so start revising. Any doubts, children? You can ask. If there is any doubt, you can ask. Raise hand. And tomorrow I'll pick up the poem An Elementary School Classroom in a Slum. Yes, any doubt, you can raise hand. Come on. No doubt.